Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's DA.
All right, welcome inside episode 8 of the Permission Granted podcast. We are always available 2 ways for you guys. Numero uno on iTunes. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, remember you can get us on your phone very easily to subscribe. Go to iTunes and just search DA's Permission Granted podcast. Also, if you're listening to us on your phone or on iTunes, we're on YouTube. Every single episode on YouTube, so you get your pretty pictures as well, which seemed to make the Nicole Zalumis podcast very popular last week. Record number of views. So that's at youtube.com/TheDA Show. I'm very excited about this episode because we're going to talk to Leonard Marshall coming up here. And he was an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler for the New York Giants and has some really interesting thoughts on the coaching kind of carousel dynamics that's going on in the NFL since when he played. And also a little bit later on in the podcast, of course, the producer's side, the side B, in which Brock and Mraz are going to break down Giants-Eagles week. Yes, they're at each other's throats, as you might imagine, all week long. And apparently they've taken shots at me for my impersonations, which I'm not happy about, but we'll see how that goes. So, like I said, we've got Leonard Marshall here, and he went to a number of Pro Bowls. He was an All-Pro as defensive end for the New York Giants throughout the 80s and early 90s. Now, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants and also co-authored a book about that 1990 team that kind of Cinderella won the Super Bowl and has some really interesting thoughts about Bill Parcells and the bonds that coaches have to have and how you get successful in this league as a head coach in the wake of all the kind of Jim Harbaugh stuff and stuff that's going on with Belichick now as well. So why don't we hear that? Here's Leonard Marshall, a guest on the Permission Granted podcast. Welcome back to CBS Sports Radio, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Damon Amendolara, DA with you, and really a pleasure to have on our next guest. He's a guy that won a pair of Super Bowl championships for the New York Giants in 1986 and 1990. He has a number of different productive career endeavors that he's gone into that we're going to talk about as well. There's a book as well that's out, When the Cheering Stops, about that 1990 Giants team that he helped author. It's Leonard Marshall, former Pro Bowler and All-Pro, who joins us here on the show. Leonard, how are you?
Good afternoon, fellas. How y'all doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, it's great to catch up with you. You know, I want to ask you about the beginning because you decided to go to LSU and stay close to home, but you were recruited by Bama at a time where Alabama obviously was a dominant program. Do you ever think about how your life or career would have been different or been affected had you been coached by Bear Bryant?
I'll tell you what, sometimes I do. I mean, I actually revisit that situation as well as the University of Oklahoma because I really leaned hard and thought hard about going to the University of Oklahoma and trying to build my career there and seeing whether or not pro football was an option for me from playing in the Big 8. The thing that kind of talked me out of it was on my recruiting trip, I happened to be with a running back from Texas at that time that was also looking at the University of Oklahoma as an option for himself. And when he decided he was going to go to SMU, I said, well, that means I'm going to end up playing a lot of defense. I don't know if I'm going to like this. So as it turned out, Eric Dickerson ended up going to SMU, and I ended up going to LSU, so it worked out for both of us.
How interesting is that? How was playing under the lights when you're at LSU and in front of that incredible atmosphere? Because I've been down there once, and I just could not believe how exciting and energized that whole scene is.
Well, you know, you get a chance to play in front of, anywhere from 85 to 90,000 people every Saturday night. Back in those days, we played a lot of night games, and the stadium was probably 10, 12,000 people less than it is today. Today it holds 102,000 people. It was big-time fun, man. I mean, my freshman year, we played the University of Southern California in that stadium. We played Colorado in that stadium. We played Alabama in that stadium. We played Florida State in that stadium. So, my freshman year was, was quite a year for a young man to come into college football and then play as a freshman and then have a team that was as good as the team that we had. I mean, we were pretty good our freshman year.
Yeah, not bad at all. And I got to imagine going into your college career and having success right off the bat and seeing, as you said, those kind of huge crowds and that energy and everything that LSU had to offer. That's got to be kind of a mind-blowing experience for an 18 or 19-year-old, right?
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. I mean, walking to a place like that, you're playing for a celebrated coach, a legends coach in college football, and Charlie McClendon. And you had to put your game. So it was a big deal for me back in those days. But it got even bigger. The platform got even bigger at the next level because the next level, there's money involved. And whenever there's money involved, as they always say, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Well, it's so interesting the time that you entered into the Giants organization and into the NFL, because you come from LSU and Baton Rouge and Louisiana, and then you land in New York City with the stalwart franchise in the middle of the 80s, which New York City in the 80s obviously was a lot of fast living. Is that a mind-blowing thing for a rookie or a second-year player to have to try to digest? And on top of it, the Giants were ascending and becoming a champion.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, at the time I arrived here, the Giants were still losing a lot of ball games. They were losing a lot of ball games closely, and they were a team that didn't have a lot of talent. I mean, I had this conversation 2 nights ago with a former player, actually a player that I replaced. That when I came here, he was traded to the Rams. A gentleman by the name of Gary Jeter. And Gary and I had a long talk about, 1977 through 1982 while he was here, versus what he got a chance to witness and envision from 1983 to probably 1987. And he said, I wish I was on those teams from 83 to 87 because every year we continually got better. My draft, 9 guys, 11 guys made the roster. My draft, 9 guys made the roster in 1984. We ended up going to playoffs. 1985, I'm defensive lineman of the year. We ended up going back to the playoffs. 1986, we have 7 guys take on the roster, and we ended up winning the Super Bowl. So just to show you how teams can transition over a certain period of time and how they do it by adding picks and guys sticking on the team.
Yeah, that Giants team was taken off, really took off under George Young, who kind of inherited it with it being a teardown project. And then, as you said, all these draft picks and all these very key acquisitions end up leading to you guys becoming a champion. But, you're also coached by Bill Parcells, and you had some run-ins with him about weight issues. And how difficult was it to be a young player and then walk into a Parcells locker room where, from stories that we hear, he kind of would personally manipulate each and every relationship to get the best out of guys, but he wouldn't mind rubbing you the wrong way. That's got to be tough.
Well, the first things first, the one thing that Bill taught me early on what it meant to be a professional. And when I mean professional, take the job serious, put a lot into the job. The job becomes your life because it becomes your livelihood. So that's the first thing he did. And as a rookie, I didn't understand that. And once I comprehended that and was able to digest that and get underneath my belt, I think from there on, Bill and I had a smooth relationship. And the one thing that he could tell you that he could count on was he knew that from 1984 forward, I was going to be one of his guys. I was going to be a guy that, not only worked his tail off in the weight room, worked his tail off on the field, and left my A game on the field. So I didn't have a problem from Bill pretty much after 1983. I think from that going forward, the reason why I stuck on a roster and played here for 10 years and averaged 8 quarterback sacks a season throughout my career here at the New York Giants. So that part of it, I'm glad I got a chance to get it, to understand it, and wouldn't have asked for a different football coach than a guy like Bill Parcells. I think the guy that really rubbed a lot of guys the wrong way in our locker room because he didn't have a personality was Bill Belichick. And once he obtained a personality and understood how to deal with and communicate with players, I think it made him a better football coach. And it's indicative today of how his coaching style is today and how he deals with players today as the head football coach of the New England Patriots.
Let me ask you about being a Parcells guy, because we hear that term thrown around, and there definitely are guys like yourself, Carl Banks, Maurice Carthon, guys that are always called Parcells guys. What made a Parcells guy? Why was your bond different than other guys on the roster with him?
Because he respected you. He respected your work ethic. He respected your preparation, both on and off the football field, and how you carried yourself. He respected how you went about and conducted your business. And if he could do that with you, you never had a problem with him. You became one of his guys. But if he was a guy that had to question, one, your integrity, two, the character of the individual, and then three, the work ethic and attitude that you approach to play the game and represent him, both on and off the football field, just like any other football coach, you're hired to get fired. You know, the day that you screw it up, that's the day you're gone. So as long as you're productive, as long as the people that work for you are productive, you'll maintain this job. The day you don't, it's out the window.
See, I find this really interesting because Jay Glazer of Fox Sports over the weekend talked about how it looks like Jim Harbaugh might be gone even if they win a Super Bowl this year. And he says that right now Harbaugh is kind of abrasive and rubbing guys the wrong way. And even though he's had success, he compared him to Parcells and said Parcells was abrasive, but Parcells had really close player relationships. He said Harbaugh does not. Could you see that being a big difference between the two coaches?
Well, you got to understand, if Jim took anything from Bill Parcells, he took that you had to be a hard ass, but he also took a piece of Mike Ditka, which Mike Ditka, his personality was never get close to a football player, because a player could cost you your job at any point in time in your career. So, you know, I would say that sounds like what I'm hearing is he's got a bit of both of those guys. You know, he's got a bit of Parcells in that, you know, he wants to understand and be able to manipulate the psyche of the man as a football player working for him. But he also doesn't want to get too close to him because he feels like, you know, it will bring him back to his days as a player when he tried to get close to his coach in Mike Ditka, and it didn't happen. So, you know, that's what it sounds like. I heard a great Jim Harbaugh story the other day from a former quarterback whose name I'm not going to mention, but his son was being recruited by Stanford. And he told me he walked in and Harbaugh told him at Stanford this was the best job he ever had in his life. He said, with the leaving that trip after 2 weeks, the next thing you know, he turned on the tube and he looked up and Harbaugh was signing a contract to go and coach the San Francisco 49ers. So he said, I question that in that, you know, if a guy's going to make a decision to make his mind up, be up front. Be royal about it. Be up front. Say, this is what it is. I'm always opportunistic, and that's what's going to happen. So I think that's the thing that rubs me the wrong way about certain coaches in the National Football League. Some of them, they play the game, but they don't play the game fairly.
What do you mean they don't play the game fairly? Just because they'll tell you one thing and do another?
Yeah, it's called a bait and switch tactic, and a lot of them tend to use that tactic.
Now, when you say, you know, you guys didn't really get along with Belichick because he didn't have a personality, was he not forthright with you guys at first as well, or was just that you guys couldn't bond or connect with him because he didn't kind of show a human side?
It was the latter. You couldn't really bond and really show him or have him show you the human side of the man because he felt like he couldn't get close to you. And I guess he took that from his father, or took that from other coaches who at the time, during the 80s and maybe the 70s and maybe the 60s for that matter, that's how you had to do it. But, you know, the nuances and the new times of the NFL that have now come forth is you have to communicate and be articulate with people and be transparent with people when you're trying to get them to really work their tail off and do certain things and perform a certain way for you. And if you're able to do that, I think you're able to build a bigger, better bond. I look now with him hugging Tom Brady and hugging players on the sideline and, you know, giving players high fives and chest bumps and everything else. That guy wasn't with the Giants until that guy didn't show up on our football sideline until about 1985 when we really started whipping people's ass.
Well, yeah, in 1990, Parcells steps down and retires for the moment, and the Giants do not give the head coaching job to Bill Belichick, which in retrospect kind of seems crazy, but they give it to Ray Handley. Do you think that kind of thing about his personality was the reason that George Young did not promote Belichick to take over that job?
I think that probably was the obvious. That probably was something that George Young picked up on and probably knew in the back of his mind that could be a deal breaker. And Ray Handley was a guy who had good rapport with the players. The players really understood Ray. They liked his style. They liked the way he carried himself both in and out of the locker room. He was a guy that was a slapstick kind of guy. And, I liked Ray Handley. I mean, for his first year as head coach here in 91, I led our team in quarterback sacks. I had 11, almost 12 sacks that season. So Ray Handley never had an issue with Leonard Marshall, and he didn't have a real issue with many of the players until we really started losing ball games. In games that we should have won and games that we should have been more productive in.
Now, Belichick obviously took that Browns job, so but who knows? One would imagine that he would have stayed in New York because the Giants job was a better job, you would think, than the Browns job at that point. But the Ray Handley situation is interesting because there was a story that came out in 91, I guess, when you guys were trailing at halftime, I think to the Cowboys, like 24-0 or so, and he kind of said, all right, we're calling off the dogs, the backups are getting in, and there was an altercation or there was some type of incident at halftime where you guys, the veterans who had won a championship and were there for 2 titles, were upset with that. Was that a breaking point in terms of the respect that Handley got in that locker room?
Well, and again, it came down to, what he surrounded himself with in terms of a coaching staff and the respect that we had, or the lack of respect that we had for those people that he brought into the locker room to now work with him. We just didn't think that some of the guys that he brought in, some of these outsiders that he promoted to certain positions, in particular, Rod Russ, the defensive coordinator that he had brought in, and his coaching staff and his coaching style and his inability to reach a bunch of the veteran players that had just won a championship, 2 years removed. And now we just couldn't seem to get nothing right. We just couldn't seem to get anything right. We couldn't develop any continuity. We couldn't develop any type of rhythm in terms of playing the scheme that we were trying to install and comprehend. And it just made for a bad situation.
Well, you're probably most remembered for the devastating hit on Joe Montana in the 1990 NFC Championship game. How often do you get asked about that hit?
Oh, I get asked about it quite a bit. People tend to want to remember that one particular football play, obviously, because you make a play like that at one time one of the most perennial all-stars of the National Football League, and you end up, knocking a guy out of football for a couple of years, and it becomes a big deal. But for the most part, as a player in the scheme of things and doing what I did at the Giants. To me, it was just another day in the life of playing in such a dominant defense with a great group of guys who enjoyed the game and who I loved working with.
Was that as square as you would ever hit a quarterback, or it just so happened that you got him at a certain position, you had momentum, he kind of didn't, he was getting older at that time, and he was the all-pro, but maybe that hit looked worse than others that you had, or was that kind of the squarest, most impactful hit that you ever had?
Well, it was a square football play. I mean, I was blocked, I slipped, I was blocked, I got up off the ground and continued running. It was an effort football play. And as I see him pass the ball to tell Jerry Rice to continue to run, I leave my feet and dive, and it just so happened I separated him from the football. And, all the other stuff was part of the impact and part of the actual collision, but it was an opportunity for me to make a play to get my team and elevate my team to a chance to where we could win the game and go on and play in the Super Bowl that year. Our goal was to beat anybody that was in our way along the way in a dominant fashion so that we could get ourselves to the Super Bowl. And whatever we had to do it by any means necessary to do it, that was our mission and that was our purpose.
That 1990 team is a bit of a Cinderella because you guys had come off the NFC East Championship in '89 but lost in the Flipper Anderson game. And then you come back in '90 and people think, well, you might be over the hill. Maybe that window would close for the Giants. You end up going 13-3, but you lose Sims midway through the season, and Hostetler has to come in. He had been unproven at that point. Were you guys worried when Sims went down that it was going to be a season that once again ended without the Super Bowl?
Well, we were concerned that it was a team, it was a situation that, we were going to have to lean on each other very hard during that time, and it's indicative of, what a team is all about, and to me, championship football teams are about the people and about the ability of players to get up one more time they could be knocked down. And that was what we wanted to show the public. Even though our back was against the wall because our best quarterback at the time on paper was out, that the guy that we had as a backup was just as good of a football player. And then given the opportunity to step in and make the plays that we needed to make to win the ball game at a critical time. And that's what Jeff was able to do. I mean, there's a play in the game of the Super Bowl where Jeff is being sacked by Bruce Smith in the end zone. And Jeff actually switches hands to football. But never made a play like that. He just would never been able to do it. He wasn't strong enough to do it. He would never been able to do it. Jeff made a football play like that. We kept the ball. Instead of giving him 7 points, we gave him 2 points. But had we given him 7, the game wouldn't have been as close as it was.
Jeff also had an incredible chip on his shoulder, and I kind of feel like he still does, that he had been passed over by other teams in terms of drafting him as a quarterback. I think with Bill, with Parcells and him, they had clashed for a couple of years. And I think even after the Super Bowl, the Giants obviously had the quarterback battle. They went back to Sims. He had to go to L.A. to play with the Raiders. Did you guys get that sense that Jeff really had that chip and that edge and that bitterness that I think ended up motivating him to what he accomplished?
Well, you always should. I mean, as a player, you always should. I mean, that's what makes players, championship style football players is to be able to put that chip on your shoulder and always try to better your best and always be a guy that never rest on your laurels and always continue to challenge yourself and say, can I be better? Can I get better? That's what I like. I like this picture, that picture for the Dodgers. I think this guy's a great baseball player. But every time they tell him he's great, he comes back and he does something else that makes you go, wow, he really is the real deal. So, that's what you got to do. That's what the great ones do.
In terms of that battle with the 49ers, you guys had some epic battles, and then obviously you're forever connected with Montana. Was Montana the best quarterback you guys faced during that era?
It was a toss-up between Montana and Elway. To say, who's the better quarterback. I think the one thing that Montana had that Elway didn't was he had a couple of rings already. So, if you want to evaluate him on that, then you'd have to say Montana was the better quarterback. But, a guy that could take over a football game, a guy with a big, strong arm, and he could deliver you the deadly blow at any given point, that was John Elway. With no doubt.
For every year, for a decade, you had to go down to Veteran Stadium, you and the Giants, and play on that turf and in that bowl with those fans. Was that the worst road trip you guys had to take every year, was to Veteran Stadium in Philly?
Nah, not necessarily. I thought RFK was a lot tougher.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I really enjoyed the challenge of playing RFK. The three lawyers that sat behind us dressed like piglets and, them giving it to Lawrence and giving Lawrence the business. We enjoyed that, man. It's part of the competition, going to a foreign place and playing in a foreign place, is dealing with all the idiosyncrasies involved and having your guys and your team and your players, all you guys elevate your game to another level and be motivated by crap like that. And we enjoyed the challenge, I got to tell you.
Obviously, watching Lawrence Taylor on film on TV at a stadium as a fan, you can tell what a great player he was. But I'm sure it's different when you're playing next to him. You're playing on the same defense with him. What do you pick up playing with LT that the common fan or the common media member could never know?
Just how competitive that guy was. I mean, he was just, he was, not only was he having to play the game at a level like that, but he just was your consummate professional and a real competitor. I mean, he didn't want to do you. He wanted to demoralize you. He wanted to demoralize you. He wanted you to be able to look back on the ball game and say to yourself, damn, how did I ever line up to play against those guys? Those guys are so much better than me today. How did I even do that? And that was his deal. I mean, he wasn't embarrassed or ashamed or, whatever to let you know it. I mean, he'd even tell you during the course of the ball game, I can't repeat some of the stuff that he would say, but on air here. But you've seen some of the NFL film clips. He was an abrasive guy.
In 85, you guys got knocked out by the Bears. They, of course, went on to win the Super Bowl that year. In 86, they were also a dominant team. You didn't end up facing them in the playoffs. Did you want revenge in 86 against the Bears? Were you wanting to face them?
No doubt. We were hoping we had a chance to do that because, again, we got embarrassed that day. I mean, we absolutely got embarrassed that day. We got outplayed. We got out-hit. We got out-physical. They intimidated our people on the offensive side of the football. And, we wanted to have a chance to do that, to redo that again. We wanted to have a do-over there, and we didn't get that. And that's the only thing that we didn't get that we wanted. We wanted that to be the Dallas Cowboys, the game that the Cowboys played us on Monday night in 86. We wish that was the Bears instead of the Cowboys. But we had to suddenly play the Cowboys, which we lost that ball game. It was the only ball game we lost in the regular season that year, other than to Denver late in the year. That was the only game we lost. The season opener in Dallas. But we wish we would have been playing the Bears instead of the Cowboys.
When you're watching the NFL now, does it feel like a different league to you? I mean, there's been so many rules changes. You guys obviously played in a league where there was a lot of money and a lot of celebrity and a lot of buzz, but it's gone to a totally different level now. At some points, does it feel like a foreign league when you watch it?
It does somewhat, but yet, it's still the National Football League. It's just, the rules, the regulations, the way they treat the players in the game, the protocol involved, some of the things they get away with now. After going to game live now, I feel like I'm at a WWE match more than a football game. There's things blowing up, there's cheerleaders everywhere, there's tons of people on the field versus back in the day when I was playing. There wasn't that many people on the field. You felt like it was a real gladiator sport. Now it's like a spectacle event. It's a spectator event now. So it's a little bit different now, but it's still a good thing. The NFL represents, entertainment, family fun. A lot of fanfare still involved. There's, all the camaraderie with people wanting to wear jerseys and wear, their team stuff to games. All that stuff is still there, but it's just a lot different.
What do you think about the recent scandals that have hit the NFL and how Goodell has handled them and all the controversy surrounding it?
Well, all that stuff is still questionable. I think the guy's done a great job. I think Roger's done the best he can with what he's been given. I think the fact that he's done so well for the owners over time, these guys have made a tremendous amount of money the last 5 to 7 years. By being, football owners, it's indicative how to get into the NFL to become owners, and this is real people with real money trying to do so, and why. And I just think that as they begin to really now peel back the onion and get down to the root of some of these problems, that they're going to have to make some critical decisions, make some changes, and implement some systems and policies that will protect the integrity of the game and protect the integrity of that shield going forward in order for that league to survive and sustain its viability in the marketplace.
You are part of a group, the Playbook Franchise Fund, an investment fund for former and current professional athletes, high net worth individuals as well. How's that endeavor been getting into that recently?
He's doing great. You know, my buddy and friend of 15 years, Steve Levinson, and I designed a concept that we felt that would serve both current and retired professional athletes as well as the general population with an investment product and a tool to invest money to protect their earnings, savings, and whatever for their families. The product offers yield. It offers yield, and in a market which has pretty much become a no yield market. You got bonds that are paying less than 7%, and some of these are AA and AAA rated bonds, where we are paying 7.5% preferred return on this product. This product also has a venture capital feature on the back end that will invest in a portfolio of new concepts from a franchise standpoint and necessity-based franchises, you know, things that we use on an everyday basis, from Wendy's to Arby's to Hardee's to Burger King to Dunkin' Donuts to FedEx Express, Sprint PCS, Metro PCS, and other products like that. So we feel that this fund will not only create some nuances and opportunities for people that are looking to protect the integrity of their money, their money work is hard for them as they work in their careers and their businesses, whatever they're involved in, prior to investing in our fund. This is one of probably 5 or 6 that we may do over time, but we feel we got a good product.
Well, that's the Playbook Franchise Fund, an investment fund for former and current pro athletes and also high net worth individuals. Leonard Marshall, former All-Pro and Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion, also part of the authors of the When the Cheering Stops, a book about Parcells of the 1990 New York Giants and the price of greatness. That's available at Amazon.com right now as well. And Leonard, this was fantastic to catch up, my man. Thank you so much for the insight, and we're going to have to do it again. This was awesome.
You're quite welcome. And for those interested in the fund, visit www.psgfif.com for all information pertaining to the fund.
Fantastic, man. Well, again, Leonard, this was awesome. Thanks again for stopping on by. Let's catch up again here soon.
You got it, my friend. Thank you for having me.
All right, great stuff from Leonard Marshall here on the Permission Granted podcast, available on iTunes. Subscribe to us there, or on YouTube. Every single episode available, youtube.com/The DA Show. Subscribe there, and it'll be automatically delivered to you. All right, so Mraz joins me now. And Mraz, I'm sure as a guy in yourself who grew up in a Giants household, and your dad is a nutso, and you were born amid that 86 Super Bowl run, having Leonard Marshall here on the broadcast, that must have been pretty cool.
It is so cool because I always hear my dad talk about the stories of those teams that he was playing on.
The Big Blue Wrecking Crew.
Exactly. And to hear it basically right out of the horse's mouth and reminisce, it's like my father, basically telling me secondhand, and here it is right there. It's pretty cool.
Wait till Papa Mraz hears this podcast.
I'm sure it'll be downloaded right away on his new fancy phone he has.
So how interesting was it to hear him talk about Jim Harbaugh that way? You know, that through some stories, that players that he had talked to, whatever, that Harbaugh doesn't exactly have the best reputation amongst players that have even been recruited to Stanford, let alone played for him at San Francisco or with the Cardinals.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing hearing him talk about that, and he wouldn't name the player's name, obviously, but if a former player had a kid there and was getting recruited, you would think that if Harbaugh really knew he was leaving for San Francisco, man-to-man, somebody else in the profession, he would say, hey, listen, your kid may recruit here, but I'm heading out to San Francisco. If Harbaugh's not going to be honest like that with not just an ordinary dad, who is he going to be honest with? It kind of comes across very snaky to me.
Yeah, and also, Harbaugh is so intense. And it's worked. Look, that has worked. But I mentioned this on the show, and I mentioned this to Leonard Marshall as well, that Jay Glazer, I thought, brought up a really interesting point, and that was that he has spoken to a lot of players, that Parcells had his Parcells guys. Leonard Marshall is one of those guys. You never hear about Harbaugh having Harbaugh guys. And Harbaugh might have this kind of aloofness or this wall up in front of him to where players don't really have that bond. And if you don't have that bond, you're much more likely to yap to the media about how unhappy you are. And so it might only be 3, 4, 5 guys in that locker room. Heck, it might only be 1 or 2. But those guys have no interest. Those guys have no interest in defending you. And then if you don't have those bonds elsewhere, you won't hear a lot of other guys come to your rush to your defense. And I think that's what's happening in San Francisco. Parcells had his guys who could police the locker room. Doesn't feel like San Francisco has those guys.
No, he's totally on an island. And I know if I was in a locker room and I really would go to war for a guy, so to speak, if I hear he's on the hot side and I hear all these rumblings, I'm going to go out and I'm going to play harder to save that guy's job. I can't really think that the 49ers are going to go out there every week if they don't have that personal bond with this guy and fight for him.
How about also the Belichick thing where man, what you see with Belichick is just how dry and gruff, and he just seems annoyed at all times. And Marshall kind of admitted that that's how he was with the players. The players didn't really like him early on in his tenure in New York.
It's funny to hear Marshall talk about that coming off the old on to Cincinnati stuff that happened 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And it just shows you that Bill Belichick has been that kind of guy forever. From the get-go, he wasn't like that. He was like, how he is with the media is how he was with the players at the beginning. And he had to adapt and change the way he was. But, boy, he still kept that outer edge, that rough edge, and that's how he still is when he talks to the media.
And it's got to be the biggest reason he never got that Giants job after Parcells left, because Parcells steps down right when Belichick leaves. Like, Parcells steps down after the Super Bowl, Belichick gets the job in Cleveland. And I don't think George Young, the GM at the time, ever even thought about Belichick as coaching the Giants. Because I would have to imagine he would have stayed, unless it was just about the shadow of Parcells, he would have stayed instead of going to Cleveland, which was a rebuild project. I mean, there has to be a reason that the Giants passed him over.
Yeah, and it probably dates back to kind of what we were talking about with Harbaugh. If he's not going to be a player's guy like that, and it's going to take players a long time to adapt, and that was just with Belichick as a coordinator. Could you imagine if he was a head coach right out of the gate?
Yeah, so here's the problem. I thought I had DA guys here on the show, and apparently I don't, since you guys behind my back talking about snakes, just trashing my impersonations. What's going on the podcast?
Listen, there had to be a forum for it. You're sitting there, making fake Tony Sperano sounds, sounding like you're basically, ready to eat a whole roll of cheese in Wisconsin when the guy's from Connecticut. You're doing your John Lackey.
Yeah.
It was too much. And me and Brock had to take to a forum and unleash.
What, because I gave you no forum on the show to take shots at me?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's still the DA show. We got the producer side of the podcast. When we got the wheels, we're throwing you under the bus.
So wait a second. If I would have given you the forum on the show, you guys would have taken the shots? It's just that this was all kind of covered up and it was bubbling over on the podcast?
Yeah, I think so. And plus, you gave us a little time to even think more and more and get more aggravated here in your impersonations.
I would think, in retrospect, the impersonations got better with age.
Listen, I'm hot and cold on that. I can listen and laugh, but at the same time, boy, those were really rough.
See, yeah, all right, fine. Well, look, if you would have taken your problems to me, I could respect it more if you're going to go to the media, but don't go to the media first. I don't need to hear from the podcast. That's where you guys are unhappy with the impersonations.
For now on, we'll keep all situations in-house.
All right. So, Brock and Mraz next in the Permission Granted podcast, producers side B. And stick around for that also, as we always remind you, subscribe to us on both YouTube, youtube.com/The DA Show, and on iTunes as well by searching DA's Permission Granted. All right, let's hear from Mraz and Brock.
Welcome into side B of the Permission Granted podcast. We are now on episode 8. Here in the Permission Granted podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/The DA Show. DA will post a YouTube video with the podcast after it is posted on iTunes. DA will tweet it out. I will tweet it out at KBrockJR. And Mraz will tweet it out as well at Sean Morash CBS. Sean, how are you doing today?
I am feeling great. How about you?
I'm okay. Took one on the chin last weekend. Both having to do with the show in terms of going 0-3 on my picks, which is really sticking with me here. I can't seem to shake it. And also, missing out on most of the great college football games of the weekend and on the NFL because I was traveling all day on Sunday. So I still haven't recovered, and it seems that I missed the best football weekend of the year.
Yeah, it's a football weekend you're never going to get back. Was the shrimp cocktail at cocktail hour at least good?
They basically didn't. I think that I saw a couple shrimp puffs. I didn't get to try any, of course.
Oh, tell me they went weak on the cocktail. Was it a cheese and cracker type of spread?
A lot of cheese and crackers. Yeah, I love a good cheese and cracker, but there wasn't.
Dak Prescott's exploding. You're basically sitting there eating pigs in a blanket.
Yeah, it wasn't a good scene. A little. Obviously the wedding was a great time. I had a lot of fun, saw a lot of friends that I haven't seen from home in, probably at least 4 or 5 years. So that was fun, but missed out on basically the best college football weekend that we've had in maybe a decade. So that's pretty awesome. But let's dive right into things here. We have a big matchup coming up here on the show. Eagles-Giants, Sunday Night Football.
Let's go.
The Eagles are 4-1. Giants are 3-2. The Eagles have been an unimpressive 4-1 the past couple weeks. 2 weeks ago, they lost to the San Francisco 49ers.
Tongue twister, huh?
Tongue twister. I don't know what's going on here. Out in San Fran, and then last week they were able to barely survive against the St. Louis Rams at home. I don't really know what's going on. On the opposite side of the coin, the New York Football Giants have seemed to be, hitting stride here. That Ben McAdoo offense with Eli Manning and all their new pieces and toys seems to be hitting on all cylinders as of the past couple weeks. They've come a long way since that Week 1 drubbing in Detroit on Monday night. Where do you stand right now? How are you feeling about the Giants?
Of course, I'm going to be my usual New York arrogant cockiness. However, take that aside, you have to be very confident if you're the New York Giants because a lot of people thought it would take an entire half of the season before Eli and the offense got this down. Mm-hmm. And now there's only 5 teams in the league that have scored more points than they have. And their defenses they're very balanced. They're running the ball, they're passing the ball, their defense is playing well. They seem like a formidable playoff contender.
Now, what you were saying about, the running the ball well, apparently Rashad Jennings, who has been their catalyst running the ball for them for the first quarter of the season, will not play on Sunday night. He has a foot injury?
No, he sprained his knee.
Sprained knee. So
the MRI came back okay. It's not going to be an MCL tear, no surgery.
But he's going to be out a couple weeks.
Going to be out a couple big weeks, too, because they got the Eagles here, and then the following week they're at Dallas.
The Eagles' defense has proven to be susceptible to not only the run, but also the pass. And, you guys got Odell Beckham Jr. back last week, his first game, basically in his first action since, the first practice of August.
Yeah, and basically he was hurt throughout OTAs, too. So he's been banged up a long time.
And he was a first-round pick out of LSU. He was a dynamic receiver out of LSU. He adds a different element to that offense. Now, I saw you tweet something after the game about his speed and adding something, a dimension that the Giants offense hasn't had. But isn't that what Victor Cruz is? He's a speed wide receiver, isn't he?
Yeah, but he doesn't burn on the outside much. He's quick on the inside. He could get a lot of yak yards after the catch. He makes tough catches.
Oh, is that what yak is? I didn't know. Thanks for breaking that down. I had no idea what yak meant.
I don't know. You're missing football weekends to sit there and eat a couple pieces of cheddar on a Ritz cracker. I don't know if you even know what football terms are anymore. You okay?
No, I'm still really torn up about missing last weekend. You don't have to rub salt in the wound there.
I could tell you basically you sound like basically a possum that's been run over on the highway right now. You're
playing dead?
You're playing dead. You're sitting there, you're basically talking to me about how great the Giants are. Can we get a little juice here?
No, it's whatever. It's midweek here. We'll be all right come Sunday night. Yeah, I'm a little worried, to be honest, about the Giants coming into the Link on Sunday night. We always split, it seems like, the Giants and Eagles.
Yeah, usually.
Last year, we went up to New York, dominated you guys, then you guys came down to Philly and beat us. It's kind of just the way that this series goes. But, you guys have the Super Bowl rings, as we've talked about extensively on the show and on the podcast.
Notice you said rings, multiple.
Yeah, I gave you your credit. You don't have to rub it in my freaking face,
Okay.
Almost had to edit something out there. You want a little juice from me? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Keep talking that. So, what is something that you're concerned about heading into this week, heading into Philly? Is it the loss of Rashad Jennings? Is it, the defense, the secondary? Because we've talked about the Giants secondary where I don't think it's that great. They have some players who are kind of over the hill a little bit, mainly DRC. I don't know.
He's played well.
He's played well of late, but DRC is DRC. If you remember, he's had a couple bad seasons. Yeah, he played okay with the Broncos last year, but remember his time in Philadelphia.
Oh, well, I'm sure you remember it well.
I am all too familiar with him and Nnamdi Asomugha there on the outside corners, who basically screwed us for a couple of years. So what's your biggest concern heading into Sunday Night Football?
I think twofold. I think the Jennings injury obviously is huge because other than just being the warhorse that he is basically in the backfield.
Right.
Andre Williams is a rookie. He ran the wet ball really well last week, and Peyton Hillis will be the other guy.
Oh, Peyton Hillis is still hanging around?
He's actually played pretty well for the Giants. That being said, Andre Williams has struggled a lot in pass protection.
And rookies normally do. That's their toughest thing to pick up on.
So when Andre Williams is in the game, generally teams know that they're going to be running the ball because they're kind of shy away from the pass. But he was kind of thrown to the wolves, and he did an okay job, but he still missed a couple big blocks. So that would concern me because you expect him to get a lot of the bulk of the carries there, and if he's not protecting, that's one thing. The one thing I will say that is positive, the thing that's killed the Giants in these recent Giant-Eagle matchups has been Deshaun Jackson. I mean, you could talk about the miracle at the Meadowlands, too.
Right.
Anytime Deshaun...
Which we watched on YouTube last night during the show, which is... It's a pretty great montage. If you haven't seen it, I will tweet it out at some point this week. It's basically a culmination of the Giants taking what was it, like a 28-point lead or something like that?
I don't even remember. I don't want to remember.
And then, basically the furious comeback in the second half from Michael Vick, who, by the way, I mean, when you watch that game of Michael Vick, it gives you a taste of what he used to be. And
what he is not anymore.
No, because he did not look great for the Jets last Sunday, but you yearn for that Michael Vick. And, of course, over every play is dubbed the longtime Eagles broadcaster Merrill Reese. And I'm a huge Merrill Reese fan. You are not so much.
He's okay.
Figures. He gives you a lot of juice. I love Merrill. So anyway, I'll tweet that out later in the week. That really got kind of the juices flowing between you and I last week, and we started a little banter behind the scenes and tried to get everything ready for this week. I tell you, my biggest concern is Shady McCoy. I don't know what's going on. He struggled the past couple weeks. Obviously we have a lot of offensive line woes. Lane Johnson came back. Okay. I wasn't really that impressed. But the loss of Jason Kelsey and of Evan Mathis is really going to hurt the Eagles and hinder them going forward. They're supposed to be out, a month, maybe longer. And we have basically a couple guys that we picked up off the street. One guy was an undrafted, second-year player out of Notre Dame, Molk or something like that. I don't even know who's on their offensive line anymore. I mean, we could put you out there and we'd have just as good of a chance of stopping that front seven. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone on silent. So, I just wonder, is something going on with Shady? Is he injured? Is he hurt? And obviously, I'm a Nick Foles detractor as well. So I don't know, how he's going to be able to read that secondary who has played well of late.
Well, I'll say this. It sounds like you're setting up that you think the Eagles are going to lose this game.
I think I'm playing a little bit of cat and mouse, to be completely honest.
Hedging your bet a little bit?
I think...
You're going to come in here flacking your gums if you win Sunday night? And by the way, can we watch the game together Sunday night before the show?
Absolutely not. You brought this up last night behind the scenes on the show that you wanted to watch Giants-Eagles here at the studios together because, it's weird. Sunday night football is tough for us because we either have to commit to watching it at home and coming in late to work, or we have to come in at basically 8 o'clock to watch the 8:30 kick. And then we're here for about 10 hours or so.
Long day.
Yeah, it amounts to a long day, especially if they're being up for watching all the 1 o'clocks and the 4 o'clocks, which we obviously have to do. But there is no way in hell that I'm going to confine myself into one of the side auxiliary studios, which is basically, a 15 by 10.
Oh, we got the big TV in the conference room, plenty of room.
No. There's no way that you and I could honestly sit next to each other for a 3.5-hour game between, with our two teams that we are, diehard fans of, and not kill each other. Because you know how you get. Victor Cruz scores a touchdown. You're going to get up on the table as long as it doesn't break and do a little salsa dancing.
Why would it break?
You know exactly why it would break. Or you're going to, if Odell Beckham does something, you're going to do some sort of, like a Death Valley, LSU Tigers chant or something. Or, you're going to give me that stupid Eli Manning face on the sidelines the whole time, the durr kind of look that he gives you.
Or the one where you hoist the Lombardi trophy down Broadway, that face.
Like that right there, if we were watching the game, and you know that I'm an intense person.
It's not going to end well. It's going to end with a black eye one way or another. Likely on my face.
Oh, you're going to give me you're going to give me a black eye? Is that what you just said?
What if I bought the wings? Let's just decide the black eye. I buy the wings. Will you watch the game Sunday night?
No. It doesn't matter what
Not even for free wings?
No free wings.
You're losing. This is what this is about. Because if you had any confidence at all, you would love to sit there and rub it in my face.
That's not it. I like watching games in this, in the confinement of my own quarters. I like to be in a controlled environment where I'm controlling all the factors. I don't want to be in a place where I'm with some loudmouth New Yorker who I want to smack around 90% of the time anyways. Do I want to be in a room with a guy who is a loudmouth Giants fan who's going to bark about the 2 Super Bowls and his New York Rangers and his freaking Yankees and whatever the hell else?
Rangers home opener is that night.
Who cares, honestly? Who the hell cares? It's football season, hockey. We'll see you in December, okay? No, so that's never, ever, ever going to happen. We'll never watch a game together, though we do have something coming out here in a couple weeks.
Something's in the works.
We got something in the works, another Mothership 30 for 30 that I think will be very enticing to the listeners because we know, we've seen the feats of eating strength that Mraz has put out on Saturdays and Sundays during the college football and NFL Sunday weekend, where he just, basically barrels through about 60 wings, a plate of nachos, a baker's dozen, mozzarella sticks, and whatever the hell else he's shoving down his gullet.
You got the weekly menu down, huh?
We've been working together for almost 2 years now. I've heard enough of it week in and week out. So that'll be coming to you hopefully in the next couple weeks. We're working on some dates, possibly some conflicts of interest, everything like that. Something else that I wanted to touch on that's been irking me. I was off Sunday and Monday. Obviously, I was away back home in Philly for the weekend. I had a wedding on Saturday, and then Sunday I spent the day with some family who I haven't seen.
By the way,
yeah,
about the third time you mentioned this wedding, you're really down on the whole situation.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten over it yet. Just because of, what the hell,
Go ahead, get it out. Let it all out.
All
Let
the
it out.
freaking weekends, Mississippi State, Auburn, Texas A&M, Alabama. Do I freaking need that? And then you got UCLA losing to Utah, and you got that miracle finish I think it was at USC where Arizona State basically throws up, a Hail Mary to the gods, and it somehow drops into the breadbasket of the wide receiver. And I'm sitting, basically in the hotel lobby, crushing beers at 1 o'clock in the morning with no TVs. Can I get a freaking TV in the hotel lobby at this point?
That's unacceptable. You're right. The hotel lobby scene is always scratching to me. And if there ever is a TV, it's always stuck on CNN.
So anyways, to add to the whole bane, the bane of my existence this weekend, you decided to take a couple shots at me on the way out the door on the show on Monday morning.
I wouldn't call them shots. I would call them me doing a terrific job at what I'm good at, which is producing the DA show, which could be heard from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Radio.
Yeah, I think if they're listening to this podcast, they are damn well aware of when the show airs and who the hell is the executive producer of the show.
Any publicity is good publicity, Kenny.
The Tommy Lugauer theory? Come on! So anyways, why don't you inform the listeners of what you did for the epic fail while I was basically, just getting home from Philadelphia on Sunday night into Monday morning?
Well, it's weird. My job is to put together the epic fail. On a lot of nights, we could have multiple epic fail candidates. And there's a lot of nights where, quite frankly, we're stretching. We're going, man, we really didn't have a gem of a fail.
Basically, launching, putting ourselves on a grenade there at the end, taking a dive.
Right. So what happened was last Sunday night, we didn't have a great fail candidate, but you went 0 for 3 on your Brock's locks.
Right.
And we thought it'd be a great idea. Well, I thought it would be a great idea if we went back and pulled you picking those games and your points on them.
Which you have done multiple times this season
This was
because
the
you are
second time.
freaking lazy.
That's not lazy. That's doing a good job.
No.
If you're going to call them Brock's locks, they better be
I don't call
locks.
them Brock's locks. DA came up with
They
that.
better be locks.
I didn't come up with Brock's locks.
You
DA
went
came
0
up
for
with
3.
That.
I added the
crackback
wrong answer.
blocks with Brock's.
Here we go.
That's what it was.
I added the wrong buzzer, the wrong sound buzzer after each pick with a nice little highlight. It ended up being a great little epic fail. Now
I listened to it. It wasn't funny.
It was very funny.
It was not. And
got great
you know
response on Twitter.
It did not get a great response on Twitter. I woke up to 2 tweets basically calling you out for doing it while I was away. And my basic, that's fine. You want to take shots at me? I can, obviously I can roll with the punches. I stand by my picks. They weren't good. But, you live and learn and you move on to the next week. But, I thought after 2 years and all that we've been through, you, me, DA, I thought that we were all foxhole guys. It is widely apparent to me now that you and DA are a bunch of selfish rats who are jumping off the ship here.
Selfish rats!
Jumping off the ship here and throwing me under the bus at any opportunity that you get. So
it was a good opportunity.
I get it. And, DA gave this lame disclaimer right before the epic fail played about, well, Mraz thought this would be a good idea, but, Brock's not here. And DA, you have the power to veto the epic fail. We all know that we all discuss it before Mraz produces it and puts all the audio production pieces together. The fact that DA left me hanging and left this up to you, I got a big problem with the both of you that are going to be going forward here. So just watch both of your backs.
Well, we got DA back in the epic fail. I think the next night there with those bad impersonations. What did you think of those?
They could not end soon enough. DA was doing impersonations of John Lackey, who he said sounded like Barney from The Simpsons, which I never was a Simpsons guy. Do you like The Simpsons?
That's one of those things. If it's on in the background, I won't go out of my way for it.
I never really got the whole appeal of it. I'm a Family Guy. I think Family Guy is hilarious.
Yes, very funny.
So DA started doing that in the first hour. I forget exactly how John Lackey came up. Oh, he's pitching for the Cardinals now or something?
Yeah. He pitched a gem, and he did that.
So that goes back to DA's Boston roots, because DA was obviously a host in Boston, and Lackey was up there, and the whole chicken and beer thing and everything else that went on.
DA, we miss you in Boston, brother.
TB12 forever. And so that, DA started with that. And then the next hour, we started talking about Tony Sparano, who did some corny...
You almost said Tony Soprano.
I almost did. I always got Tony Soprano on the brain. Rest in peace, Gandolfini. We love you. So he started doing this lame impression where he basically sounded like, the guys from the the discount double check commercials, and the guys from Saturday Night Live, when Chris Farley made the whole thing famous with the Chicago Bears accent. And I mean, I couldn't get my headphones off quick enough after that segment. The guy kept going and going. DA, give it a rest. We told you it wasn't good.
Well, it was funny.
And he literally thought that it was spot on with Tony Sparano. Sparano ain't from the Midwest. He ain't from Chicago. He's from West Haven, Connecticut.
Right. And to pull back the curtain, we had called DA in the break, and we replayed what Tony Sparano sounded like and what DA sounded like. He's like, and he thought it was spot on.
He stuck by it. That was brutal.
I mean, he did hammer home the fact that it was a caricature, which, again, it made me laugh. It was funny.
That was a big stretch.
But, boy, I prefer the Lackey with the... better than the Sparano that he did, that's for sure.
Your impression of Barney from The Simpsons.
No, that's me doing DA, doing Lackey, doing Barney, if that makes any sense. I'll do it again.
You doing DA, who's doing Lackey, who's doing Barney, who sounds like... I don't know, my head's spinning here. Yeah, so... that ended up turning into the epic fail, which actually was a funny epic fail. That wasn't a swing and a miss as the night before was, and you throwing me under the bus.
See, ironically, DA probably didn't think that was a funny epic fail. It's just funny how that works.
Well, you have to be able to set personal BS aside sometimes.
No, well, you didn't for the first one. It was funny.
No. If you would have done it while I was here, okay, that's fine. But to do it behind my back and thinking that I wouldn't hear about it.
You'd think you'd be a team guy there and know that we had nothing else to work with, and you'd support the team.
That's not my fault. Do a better job. How's that?
Is that right?
Put on a better show when I'm not around.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's those are my
guns. What are you, the anchor at the end of the tug-of-war rope?
Yeah. Actually, I'm the thread that keeps this little junky show we got going together.
Let's be honest. We had a tug-of-war rope. We're tying Schwartz to the back of that anchor thing, and he's pulling strong.
Hey, as long as we get him
center of gravity.
As long as we get him some Miller Ale House wings sitting in the back there, he's not moving anywhere.
They're zingers, Kenny. They're zingers.
Funny thing, too, about this wedding, and let me bring it up for the 15th time on this podcast. Guess where the post-wedding reception, gathering was after the reception ended at midnight?
I'm going to assume the Ale House after what we were just talking about.
The Willow Grove Miller's Ale House. I mean,
where else would you rather be?
I mean, get out of here. Of course, I pull up to the hotel. What's the first thing I see? A freaking Miller's Ale House. The amount of times that I've heard Schwartz talk about Miller's Ale House, and when I get back in on Monday night into Tuesday, what does he? I tell him that I was there. What does he ask me? Oh, what'd you think of the food? Schwartz, you think when I'm drunk, that's the thing that I'm going to at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm going to go try the food? No, I'm crushing beer so I can pass out so I can get up in the morning.
Let me tell you something. The chefs do a great job of microwaving there.
It's basically a glorified Applebee's for those who don't know. It's a chain restaurant that's,
It's good, though. It's good to watch a game.
It's not. No. Give me at home watching the game. We will not be watching the game together Sunday night. Giants-Eagles Sunday night. Mraz and I will be at each other's throats for the rest of the week in preparation. As the week draws on here, it's going to get more intense. The venom will start to fly, and I will be sure to put out that recap of the Miracle at the Meadowlands Part 2 on Twitter. And DA will put this out on Twitter and on YouTube, youtube.com/DA Show. Subscribe to the Permission Granted podcast on iTunes. Rate us, give us some feedback, any sort of commentary, and we appreciate that as always, and we will talk to you next week.